other. For you guys. Dreykus, can I get agreement? Do the death. Do the death. Yes! No, goddamn, let's go. Let's go, dog. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah. Oh, man. Hey, you guys. Hey, you guys, though, real talk.
Well, there you have it. The press conference with Sean Strickland and Dreykus. Should be a hell of a fight coming up this weekend. A fight to the death, according to them. Hell, everybody, I am Drew Duncan. The show is fired up. We are live. I am brought to you in part by WBFR, Block 50 Radio, which is online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Take a device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan, iTunes, iHeart, Google, Spreaker, Deezer, etc. Wherever you're listening, I am there. I am on YouTube, The Real Drew Duncan, the RL Drew Duncan, and I do post entire episodes there for free. Guys, plenty to get to today. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Sean Strickland and Dreykus. We're going to be discussing every quarterback is in the hot seat. We got that on the menu. We're going to be talking Bills, Chiefs, Texans, Ravens, Lions, Bucks, Niners, Packers, Ohio State. Looks like they've hired Bill O'Brien to be their new offensive coordinator. We're going to be talking about that as well. Plenty to get to today. Well, there you have it. A fan rushed the stage after they agreed to fight to the death, and Strickland just says, let's go. I mean, Sean Strickland is the same dude who pulled a strap on Brody because he thought he was trying to break into his car, and then come to find out it was a completely different situation. Brody was actually on the run from 5-0 at that time, well, security anyways, and 5-0 came and arrested him because of an alleged domestic violence situation that was happening away from there, and he was just trying to hide behind Strickland's car, and Strickland was just like, nah, bro, you're just going to sit and chill and wait for 5-0 to get here. Sean Strickland is that crazy-ass white boy that everybody knows, that everybody kicks it with, but you know that at some point, like, it's about that time, man. I got to get the hell out of Dodge before dude starts really going ham. That's who Sean Strickland is. Whether you like him or love him, whether you agree with him politically or not, he's that crazy dude that everybody knows. For better or for worse, he is legitimately who he says he is. It's not an act. He's not being phony. He's being who he really is. And that press conference was absolutely bananas. You could call it WWE style you want to. You could say whatever you want. The bottom line is it was entertaining as hell. That's for damn sure. Look, I don't know how that fight's going to go down. I mean, to me, it's just like any other big-time fight, right? It's either going to be amazing or it's going to be a complete letdown. I interviewed Royce Gracie face-to-face, right, when he was still at Bellator, and he had just fought Ken Shamrock for the third time. I asked him about the direction of MMA, and one of the things that he told me was people love to stand there and see two guys duke it out, bleed out. That's not exactly MMA. In this case, it is going to be MMA because that's pretty much what these two guys do. Stand and bang, beat the living hell out of somebody, and more than likely, we're not going to see that thing go full 5 rounds. I mean, that's just all there is to it. There's more than likely going to be a knock, a tap. Somebody's going to get drilled. Whatever the case may be, that's how that thing is probably going to go down. More than likely. I don't think that these two guys are going to tiptoe around each other, sing a song, dance, and do all of that frilly stuff that we've seen before where we get two guys who love to stand and bang and they just kind of maneuver around the octagon, and who's ever good at what they're doing, that's, whoever cuts off the octagon the best, that's who's going to win the fight because they've scored with cutting off the cage in the eyes of the judges and landed a few good blows. I just don't see it happening that way. It could, but I highly doubt it. This could be an instance, though, where we've seen this before, the press conference is a lot more entertaining than the fight itself. bottom line here is, I just think that these two guys have an MO for each other that will probably never go away. And I mean never. All the DMs and all that stuff. Look, you've got a Dreykus that's been undefeated since he's been in the UFC, okay? And you've got Sean Strickland, who's just a madman. And neither one of these guys really pull a lot of punches. I think it should be an entertaining fight. You never know what will happen, but at the bare minimum, we at least got one hell of a presser out of it. That's for damn sure. Well, one thing that I've been tired of, hard transition here, hard pivot, is, and obviously we're going to get more into this, obviously, as the show goes on today, but why are we sitting around talking about quarterbacks that is the most on the hot seat? You've got Colin Cowherd saying that it's Josh Allen. You've got another guy, was it Danny O, talking about, well, it's Lamar Jackson to change the perception of his type of quarterback. You've got to win a Super Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. First of all, Lamar Jacksons of the world have won Super Bowls. I guess we forgot about John Elway existing, similar style of play. I guess we forgot about Steve Young existing, similar style of play. They've been to Super Bowls. Donovan McNabb, scrambling quarterback, right? The whole reason why he didn't go to Nebraska was because he wanted to show that he could throw the football at Syracuse. I guess we've got, the whole thing about Patrick Mahomes, scrambling quarterback, but again, not quite Lamar Jackson. I just think it's really kind of an ignorant thing to say. Doug Williams and Warren Moon, I agree, are more pocket passer guys, but for anybody who just thinks of Lamar Jackson as a running back, as another thing coming. But for me, the point of what I'm saying is it's all these quarterbacks are, from Baker Mayfield to Josh Allen to Lamar Jackson. These are all guys that have all been talked about as they can't get it done in the playoffs. They're going to go one and done. They're not going to make it past the divisional round, et cetera, et cetera. Mahomes still owns Josh Allen. All these, Jared Goff, he's been to a Super Bowl, but he got dominated in that Super Bowl by the New England Patriots defense. The trade so far has worked out more in favor for the Rams. I don't care that Detroit won that football game. The Rams have a ring on their finger. Stafford has a ring. It's something that Jared Goff does not have. I don't think that anybody is going to see Lamar Jackson in his style of play as unable, because Josh Allen, a season ago, when they were both completely healthy, or season prior to that, ran for more yards than Lamar Jackson did. So what are we really talking about here? The idea of a quarterback now in today's game is they have to be able to be mobile, be able to run the football, the RPOs, the option, move around in the pocket, look downfield, trying to make a play with their arm, and if they can't get it done with their arm, make a play with their legs. That's literally every quarterback that exists right now in the NFL. Now, if he's trying to say it's about black quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes has won a Super Bowl. Doug Williams has won a Super Bowl. Donovan McNabb has been to a Super Bowl. If that stigma still exists with anybody else, to me, that's their fucking problem. And mind you, at the beginning of the year, I celebrated the Ravens for having an all-black QB room. And I understand that to a lot of people it's not a big deal. But my thing is, well, in 2023, because that's obviously the beginning of the season, black people are still celebrating first. But if anybody's got an issue with Lamar Jackson and calling him a running back at quarterback, then I would encourage you to go look at the numbers from when him and Allen were both healthy. Even this season. The reality is that's the type of quarterback that is really, it's needed in today's NFL. With all the speed demons and everybody flying around everywhere, come on now. I just really think that Lamar Jackson, it's not about being the style of quarterback he is, the type of quarterback that he is. It's really more about, is he just another regular season QB? Because there's been plenty of those over the years. I mean, how long before Peyton Manning got a ring? Let's remember that. All right, everybody, we got to take a break. We'll be back. Don't touch that dial.
Block 50 Global Radio.
Good afternoon. In a little better mood today, man. Anybody got any contract questions?
There it is. Mike Tomlin at the podium. Good afternoon. Anybody with any contract questions? Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. The show is fired up, and we are live. I am brought to you in part by Block 50 Radio, which is online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. You could get everything there. You can listen to programming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year. Latest in sports news, entertainment news, etc. It's all at block50radio.com. Guys, I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Take a device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan, iTunes, iHeart, Google, etc. Wherever you're listening, I am there. I am on YouTube, The Real Drew Duncan, the RL Drew Duncan, where I do post entire episodes for free. Can't promise you there won't be any ads. I can tell you it's going to be free. The only thing I ask is that you go ahead and hit the sub button for me. Still plenty to get to. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Mike Tomlin. We're going to be talking about Bill O'Brien. He is the new OC at Ohio State. We're going to be talking about the NFL playoffs today. And by the way, well, we'll get into it a little bit later on. But regardless, still plenty to get to. Right? McCormick, Season 9, Miami Hurricanes. That's on tap. Plenty to get to. You know, I've been praising Mike Tomlin, right? 17 consecutive seasons that are not losing seasons, okay? And especially now with the 17th game, it's even harder to accomplish that because before you could go 8-8, right? You can't do that anymore. And I still, again, I'm going to tell you one more time, Pittsburgh Steelers fan, that you could do a lot worse than Mike Tomlin. And I'm also going to reiterate here that, again, I understand that it may have been ill timing by that reporter initially when she started to bring up the contract and Mike Tomlin just walked off. I get it, just got a playoff loss, totally teed off. You know, to a lot of people, they're going to go, dude, wrong place, wrong time. As a reporter, you may not get another shot. You got to take them when they're dealt. You are asked to do your job to your fullest degree. It is what it is. So what does he do? Hey, guys, I'm better now. Just oh, man, I love Mike Tomlin for real. Who, by the way, went on to say that he fully expects to sign an extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Look, he's got the year left, obviously, and I think that they're going to have to, not only win, 11, 12 football games, but they're going to have to win a playoff game or two. I'm going to be honest. I don't think that they should fire him. I think they should give him more time. Again, I think you could do a lot worse than Mike Tomlin, and I'm telling you right now, as a Broncos fan, fine. If you guys don't want him, we'll take him in Denver. I mean, at least I will. I know that for damn sure. He also went on to stress that there's going to be a QB competition next year, that Pickett is going to have, to really earn his spot as a starter going into next season, which tells me the Pittsburgh Steelers could be looking to make a move to draft a quarterback. I don't know who you have that you could trade to move up. It's probably an impossibility at this point. I don't think that Drake May is going to be any better than what you've got on your roster right now, who I would venture to guess is going to be available by that time. I don't think you're going to get lucky enough to get Jane Daniels. I don't think Caleb Williams is the best option in the NFL draft, but that's my personal opinion. It's real complex at this point. Michael Penix Jr., I mean, who knows? To a lot of people, this is a pretty stacked draft class. To me, there's only 2 or 3 really good, truly good quarterbacks that are coming out this season. If you get lucky and Jane Daniels is there, the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get the steal of the draft. I'm going to tell you that right now. I know a lot of fans would maybe like to see him stay in Louisiana and play for the New Orleans Saints, but I don't think that's going to happen. Not that I think that they're so invested in Derek Carr. I don't see it. It could happen. Look, whoever gets Jane Daniels, I don't think they have any idea who they're really getting. I just don't. Again, that offensive line was absolute garbage for LSU all year long. There are not too many quarterbacks in college football that could have played behind that line and gave LSU the wins that he did over the last 2 seasons. I mean, that's just, to me, it's a point-blank situation. If Pittsburgh gets lucky and they're able to nab him, steal the draft, buy a picket, Mason Rudolph's definitely out the door. But, I mean, that's about it. So we'll see what happens, obviously, with Pittsburgh. I'm not one to speculate right now. Free agency is going to happen. The offseason is going to happen. The NFL draft is going to happen. So I'm not going to sit around and pretend like I'm going to know what the hell's going to happen next season in the NFL, let alone with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it is what it is. And speaking of coaching, hires, and decisions, etc., Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator of Ohio State now. Look, for me, the issue was not necessarily Ryan Day's coaching all the way a season ago. I think that he should have focused a lot more on the run game than he did. In fact, I think that was the downfall of both Ohio State and Penn State from a season ago, if I'm being honest with you. I think they could have had one of the easily top 15, top 20 running games in all of college football at Penn State and Ohio State. But for whatever reason, both teams decided that their game was going to be to throw it up as much as they could. Now, I understand that Ohio State had Marvin Harrison Jr. Okay? I'm not ignorant. And I get that he made that team a lot better than they were, and that's why, for me, he should have definitely been one of the Heisman Trophy candidates, potentially the winner, to be honest with you. For me, it was Jayden Daniels and then Penix and then Marvin Harrison Jr. Easily. That's easily. And then after that, for me, it was Benson out of Florida State. But regardless, I think that it wasn't necessarily Ryan Day. I think it was just what he was used to doing. Now you're bringing in Bill O'Brien, and with Bill O'Brien, maybe you're going to get somebody that, look, when you have an offensive situation that you're not really too keen on, he is potentially better at using guys than the way that you typically want to run your offense. Well, no, I think we could do something like this with him, and we can figure out a way to get this group of guys that we've got to kind of rally around that style one way or the other. We can mix up these styles with him, and we can really maneuver around some of his incapabilities and take his weaknesses and turn them into a strength at quarterback. You know, I know that a lot of people for Ohio State, what they're going to talk about is a bowl game that they lost. But let's remember, just about everybody opted out, transfers out the yin-yang. And so, you know, bowl games anymore don't really – it's not like it used to be. You know, this is not 1997 where if somebody wins a bowl game and they do it with a young group, or they lose a bowl game and they're competitive with a young group, then you think to yourself, well, yeah, but they're really young. They're going to be really good probably next year. And so we're going to be able to rank them predicated upon that. And again, for the umpteenth time, this is why I say preseason top 25 polls should all be but dinosaured out. Because we don't know. We really don't know. I think with Bill O'Brien going to Ohio State, it's a good move because it relieves Ryan Day of having that pressure. It relieves Ryan Day of, you know, this is all going to fall on me. I've got somebody in here that can maybe help me out, that can help me, you know, be a little bit more diverse in my play calling, and somebody that honestly, if it all goes to I can pass the buck to. I mean, let's just be honest about it. That's pretty much the way that it is right now with Ohio State. You know, Ryan Day's 1-3 against Michigan. Let's not forget that John Cooper won well over 130 games in his time with the Buckeyes, but he was only was he 111-43 was his total record? Pardon me, 111-43 was his total record. 10 of those losses were against Michigan, 2-10-1, and what was it, 95, 96, 93, those years they were undefeated going into that game against Michigan, and they lost all 3 of those years. This is the deal with Ryan Day. He's got to make an extreme decision to try and get them over the hump with Michigan, especially since they said they're doing everything that they can to keep Jim Harbaugh around. But keeping Jim Harbaugh around may mean that you've got to sacrifice Sharon Moore. So we'll see how it all plays out. All right, everybody, we got to take a break. Don't you touch that dud.
Block 50 Global Radio.
Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. The show's fired up, and we are live. I am brought to you in part by WBFR Block 50 Radio, which is online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. All of your sports and entertainment news are there on block50radio.com, as well as 24-hour-a-day programming on block50radio.com. I am on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all at Drew Duncan Radio. Wherever you're listening to podcasts, I am there. Tell your device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan on iTunes, iHeart, Google. Wherever you are listening, I am there. And I am on YouTube, The Real Drew Duncan, the RL Drew Duncan, where I do post entire episodes for free. Can't promise you there won't be any ads, but I can certainly promise you that it'll be for free. Guys, still plenty to get to. We're going to be talking NFL playoffs, obviously. We're going to be talking about McCormick going into his 9th season as a tight end with the Miami Hurricanes. Brody is going to be 90 before he graduates out of there. Seriously. Chiefs and the Bills. Look, once again, just about every quarterback that's remaining in the playoffs, with the exception of Patrick Mahomes, because obviously he's got it done already, is under a hot seat. And I said this at the beginning of the season. I said it about Josh Allen. I said it about Baker Mayfield. You know, Lamar Jackson, to me, should not be under a hot seat, but it is what it is. The reality is we all know that Josh Allen is under a microscope right now, okay? It's here we go again. We're back in the playoffs, and even though they're back at home, it still is their all-time menace, the Kansas City Chiefs. The team that beat them, you know, look, I've been so critical of Josh Allen. I'm going to give him his due for the AFC title game. You know, 13 seconds. Who the hell knew that Patrick Mahomes only needed 13 damn seconds? It is what it is. He is damn good at what he does. And the Kansas City Chiefs defense is spectacular, people. I don't know how many games of football you have seen the Chiefs play, but they are damn good. Now, here's the thing about the Miami Dolphins game, and I maintain this, and that is Miami was just very too conservative in their approach to the Kansas City Chiefs. Way too conservative. You have got to get after them. You've got to attack, attack, attack. You cannot be afraid. You cannot sit back and basically play Peyton Manning football, throwing it 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, running all these bubble screens, swing screens, play action counter screens, wide receiver screen would be about the only thing that I would try to do against the Kansas City Chiefs, because I feel like at that point you've got all that speed out there and you could potentially nullify them through that. So, but other than that, all these different damn screens that they were running, just this dink and dunk offense. You're not going to win football games against a team that plays downhill the way the Kansas City Chiefs do. And they're sitting back there. They were in zone coverage, and they're just like, okay, if they're not going to take a shot downfield, then just eyes in the backfield. Pretty simple. I double dog dare you to throw it over our heads. And I think that with Josh Allen, at least the Bills are going to be aggressive and attack. Now, the other positive is the Kansas City offense has not been up to snuff all year long. And we saw it again against the Miami Dolphins. While I gave Miami credit for stopping Kansas City plenty of times when they were, looking like they were going to be in position to score touchdowns, they stopped them and held them to field goals. But that's been the Kansas City Chiefs' MO all season long. That is nothing new. So with Buffalo, if they're able to do the same thing, then they should be able to win the football game. Now, is it still going to qualify as getting over the hump in the eyes of many? Well, let's keep it real. Number 15 is still number 15. And regardless of how poor the team has played around him this season, you still got Travis Kelce. You still have number 15. You still have Andy Reid, who, even though I have completely disagreed with a lot of his play calling this year, I think he understands how to play against the Bills better than anybody that's coaching right now in the NFL. He just has their number, and I think that everything that he's done has been, if you watch closely, pretty much the step for step what teams have done against the Buffalo Bills. I think Buffalo is going to have to do some things to really throw off the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm talking about end arounds. I'm talking about, trick plays. I'm talking about faking a punt. I'm talking about faking a field goal. I am talking about you are going to have to do something at some point to probably assert your dominance because, they almost gave up that huge lead to Pittsburgh a week ago. Let's not forget that they were up 21-0 in that football game, and Pittsburgh was still in it later on. And it wasn't against exactly the best offense in the NFL with the Steelers. You've got to finish games, and with number 15, as we all know, it is a full four-quarter game, period. Look, as far as the Texans and the Ravens are concerned, look, I think this might end up being the best game that we get this wild card weekend. Yeah, I think that the Ravens defense is just so damn good. But, man, C.J. Stroud, again, I'm not going to jock ride him. I'm not ready yet. I don't know that I'm going to say that he's going to ball out sick or anything like that. But, man, he's been impressive. I mean, there hasn't been a moment seemingly this year that has been too big for him. He's a lighthearted kid. He's a lot of fun. He's just having a good time playing football. He really is. And by the way, shame on NBC for cutting out what he had to say about his religious beliefs. They are his beliefs, and he's well within his right to say how he feels about them. And I really just, but it is, and I think that's part of why he's in such a good mood all the time. I think he is real about his faith, at least from what I can see. And when somebody's real about their faith, man, they just don't let things bother them that much. C.J. Stroud has had a season to where unequivocally Rookie of the Year. I mean, it's not even debatable. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Rookie of the Year. I don't know about MVP, but Offensive Rookie of the Year, hands down. AFC Rookie of the Year, that Brody's going to be walking away with some hardware. But this is going to be a real test for him. One of the things I talked about with C.J. Stroud at the beginning of the season was playing some better defenses, turning the football over, not throwing for as many yards. You're going to have to take away to get some pressure off of C.J. Stroud because if that defense bull rushes and pins their ears back and beats him up, the last thing you want is for your rookie quarterback who's been playing the way that he has to get hurt. Simultaneously, Lamar Jackson is under that same microscope that I just talked about with Josh Allen. Again, a good majority of the quarterbacks that are playing in these playoffs are all in that same predicament. Can they finally get it done in the playoffs? Will Lamar Jackson begin to build that Peyton Manning moniker of one and done? More one and dones than anybody in the history of the NFL in the playoffs, Peyton Manning. Is Lamar Jackson going to be him? I mean, John Elway, he had that same thing about him, right? A failed superstar. He'll never get it done. Dan Reeves basically told Pat Bowlen, it's me or you, me or him, we're never going to win a Super Bowl with number 7. Dan Reeves Pat Bowlen made a conscious decision to stick with John Elway. and it ended up being the right one. Look, I really think that with Lamar Jackson, and I've said this before, the other guys have talked about it in that locker room, you just look at him and there's a different focus. There's something different about him this season. I don't know what changed. I don't know what switch went off. I don't know what happened. What I do know is this. Number one, he should absolutely be an MVP candidate, because unless you're a Baltimore Ravens fan or one of those guys who just watches football all day long for no damn reason, you can't name 3 other players on that roster, which, by the way, they signed Dalvin Cook going ahead in this football game. So we'll see what happens with that. But the point of what I'm saying is Lamar Jackson is still carrying that offense. He still is. And that's all there is to it. He was doing it last year before he got hurt. But the team was mid, and so he got all the blame. We'll see what happens. All right, everybody, we got to take a break. Don't touch that dial.
Block 50 Global Radio.
Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. The show's fired up, and we are live. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Take a device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan on iTunes, iHeart, Google, Spreaker, Deezer, etc. Wherever you are listening, I am there. I am brought to you in part by WBFR, Block 50 Radio. They're online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. Wherever you are listening to podcasts, they are there. 24-hour programming is block50radio.com. The latest in sports news and entertainment is all at block50radio.com. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, block50radio.com. Guys, I'm on YouTube, The Real Drew Duncan, the RL Drew Duncan, where I do post entire episodes for free. Can't tell you there won't be any ads, but I can tell you it'll be free. The only thing I ask is that you go ahead and hit the sub button for me. Guys, still plenty to get to. Obviously, we're going to be talking about McCormick, 9th season as a tight end for the Miami Hurricanes. Well, in college football anyways. We're going to be discussing that as well. Lions, Bucks, Niners, Packers, the NFL playoffs. Obviously, we're going to be keeping that on tap. And the Kells brothers. Did you guys know this? Did you see that post? It's not Kelsey. It's Kells. But I guess her dad got tired of correcting it. But we're going to be talking about the Kells brothers coming up here in a little bit. Not in the way that you think, by the way. Lions and Bucks. Again, every quarterback is on the hot seat. Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff. Jared Goff was traded. It worked out for the Rams. It has yet to truly work out for the Lions. Look, I'm not saying that Dan Campbell hasn't completely turned that football team around. I'm not saying that he hasn't done a great job of putting that team together. I'm not saying that he didn't know how to use Jared Goff, that he hasn't put his full trust in Jared Goff, and I'm not saying anything bad about Detroit as far as what they've done in terms of their turnaround. But let's be honest. Jared Goff got obliterated in that Super Bowl, and I don't mean they got dominated on the scoreboard. I mean he got dominated on the football field. I still maintain to this day that Gurley was not healthy, and New England knew that if they were going to make Jared Goff be a quarterback, then they were not going to win that football game. That's just all there is to it. I have said 101 times that Goff is the definition of a system quarterback, that he needs everything to go right, and when the play breaks down, sure, he'll make a couple plays here and there, but who in the NFL at quarterback right now is not playing that that isn't some sort of an athlete? I mean, everybody from Pickett to, maybe Rudolph, I guess, but even then he's a backup, right? I mean, you've got Lamar Jacksons and Josh Allens and Baker Mayfields. Everybody is somewhat of an athlete. Now, obviously, some supersede others for the most part, but just about everybody playing quarterback in the NFL now is also a gifted athlete in addition to being a QB. But this is what separates quarterbacks, and we've said this a million times over the years being on my program, the reality is this. You have these game-breaking moments, and it's do or die for both of these guys. Let's not forget that there's incentives riding for both guys. But with Baker Mayfield, it's all going to be about coming up this season. Because if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers decide to franchise tag him, that's $35 million right there. They could maybe give him a multi-year deal, but I think he's got to win at least one more playoff game because otherwise they may go, dude, we just can't. Do I think he needs more than one season? Baker Mayfield's had a lot of seasons in the NFL already to really prove himself. I'm just saying that it's that time. It's that time with him. It's that time with Jared Goff. You know, if Jared Goff is going to show that he's a winner and that this trade wasn't a bad idea and that he is, in fact, better than Matthew Stafford, it's going to take more than the Detroit Lions beating the Rams in the playoffs to get that point across. Because as long as Stafford is walking around the country with a ring on his finger, it still worked out better for the LA Rams than it did the Detroit Lions. And I don't think that there's really any other discussion there. There's really not. Baker Mayfield has got weapons around him. Jared Goff has been somewhat in that situation that Patrick Mahomes has had, because let's not forget that the Lions and Chiefs have been basically 1-2 throughout the season on most drops in the NFL. There's a lot riding in these playoffs for both of these guys. And as far as the Packers and 49ers are concerned, look, Christian McCaffrey's been having full practices this week. I've talked about it before, his importance to the football team. For 49er fan who thinks that Brock Purdy is the MVP of that football team, I hate to break it to you, but he's not. In fact, Christian McCaffrey could very well be the MVP of the NFL. Again, I reiterate a couple of facts. Number one, they were 2-3 a season ago when they traded to get C-Mac. When they got C-Mac, he was there for, a day? He had a couple of snaps against Kansas City Chiefs. They lose that football game. They're 2-4. The following week, he's there for an entire week. He's got 183 all-purpose yards, a running, throwing, and receiving touchdown in that football game. By the way, the 49ers don't lose again until the NFC title game. And let's remember that in between there, Jimmy G was the quarterback before he got hurt and Brock Purdy took over. And that was in December. I would like to also reiterate that in their losses this season, Brock Purdy has a total of 10 turnovers and 3 touchdowns. It's really simple for Green Bay. If you stop Christian McCaffrey and you force turnovers, you will beat the San Francisco 49ers. Because Brock Purdy has yet to show me that he can overcome a bad day from Christian McCaffrey, who in 3 out of their 4 losses didn't even have 65 yards rushing. When he's hurt, he's not. Brock Purdy's just shown that he can't get it done. That's all there is to it. He has yet to prove to me that if it all breaks down, if the defense is having a bad day, that if the offense isn't clicking the way that it needs to be, that he can figure out a way to make plays and separate himself in that way. John Elway did it. Tom Brady did it. Steve Young did it. Joe Montana did it. This is where you separate yourself. Patrick Mahomes does it. This is where you separate yourself. This is how we know. And if you can't do it, then you're not the QB that people hype you up to be. That's just all there is to it. It's nothing personal. Again, if you put Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, even Josh Allen, a lot of quarterbacks in that situation, Joe Burrow, you put him in that situation, and a football team is 16-1. It's not even debatable. Then on the other side of this thing, you got Jordan Love, right? And I'm sure most people have seen the comparison with the 2010 Green Bay Packers, the way that their season ended with Aaron Rodgers, they go 7-2, 7-1 down the stretch. You know, the yards per game, the completion percentage, and all that stuff. Look, I'm not worried about that. You know, and look, I don't think Jordan Love should be either, although I have said that if out of every quarterback in the NFL right now, he is certainly in the worst position. Following Brett Favre, following Aaron Rodgers, this is back-to-back. How many times can you possibly strike gold? Uncle Shay's calling for a big-time contract. I'm not there yet. Now, if they get past Frisco, then maybe. But even then, I still got to see another season. My thing is with the Green Bay Packers is they have yet to play a full four-quarter game of football. And I've talked about this a lot throughout my career. And I've talked about this a lot throughout the season with the Green Bay Packers. They may play good for one quarter at the beginning, or they may be bad for three quarters and all of a sudden be good at the fourth quarter. There's just been no consistency in terms of just really even that Dallas Cowboy game, you could say potentially that they gave up way too easy at the end of that football game. Maybe they let off the gas a little too early. Yet to see a full four quarters from that football team. They're going to have to do it against Frisco because I think that Christian McCaffrey is set to go off. And I think that Shanahan is going to have a different game plan than what we've seen so far with the 49ers. They run a very Oregon style of offense. I think we're going to see a lot more wide open spread looks. That's what I think. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back. Don't touch that dial.
Block 50 Global Radio.
Everybody, I am Drew Duncan. The show's fired up, and we are live. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Take a device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan on iTunes, iHeart, Google. Wherever you're listening, I am there. I am brought to you in part by WBFR Block 50 Radio. They're online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts, like I said. If you miss the show live on the radio, just hit the podcast, hit the YouTube channel, The Real Drew Duncan, The RL Drew Duncan. Sorry, I got distracted looking at my phone here. The RL Drew Duncan. I am on YouTube. Episodes are free on there. I'm not going to tell you there won't be any commercials, ads, whatever you want to call it. All I'm going to tell you is that it will be free. The only thing I ask is that you hit the sub button for me. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Drew Duncan. Drew Duncan Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I got to stop looking at my phone, man. I wonder if I got a slight form of ADHD. I think I have a slight form of dyslexia because I know a lot of times I read stuff backwards. Maybe that went undetected for a long time. Who the hell really knows? But regardless, still plenty to get to, which, by the way, Stephen A., Brunson goes off for 20 in the fourth quarter. You still a bigger star? Anyway, Sean McCormick, the Kells brothers, which, okay, I'll admit, all right, it was really entertaining to figure out that the Kells, that's the way that it's actually enunciated, and that the dad just got really damn tired of it, and he was just like, whatever, and he just started letting it go. So it's not Kelsey, it's Kells. All right, so that's cool. But outside of that, can we stop with the every 2 hours have you guys seen how far down the audio books and video books they've been going? Man, they've been digging up everything out of the archive about Jason and Travis. It's just like everything. I get it. There's the potential that Jason's going to retire, but he hasn't even retired yet. And we're already talking about him like the dude has been long gone. Even if he retired right now, it's acting like he left the NFL 15 years ago. He didn't. He hasn't. Can we stop? Jeez. How in the hell? That's the thing that bothers me, I think, with social media. Remembering Jason Kelce. Like, bro, dude is alive. Not only is he alive, but he's not even officially out of the NFL yet. Not only is he not officially out of the NFL, it's just he's doing podcasts and stuff. Like I really cannot stand the whole like let's remember this career, bro. He just had the career. He literally just had it. Can we let somebody just please retire and retire with like, you know, hey man, great career. Let's give out a couple of stats and then move on. Like I get it, you know, it's kind of a slow news day and all that. You know, I had to really dig to find everything to talk about. I mean, like even this, like normally I wouldn't bring something like this up. It's a bit of a stretch, right? Like normally I wouldn't spend time on something like this for the most part. So I get what it's like to be desperate for news, and I appreciate you giving me the conversation piece. But gosh damn, man, at some point, like just chill. It's been like this all year long with everything, man. And look, I'm a supporter of Prime, but that got old really quick. You know, the Taylor Swift and Travis thing, that got old really quick. You know, we're back to LeBron James post every 20 minutes again. That's getting old already. You know, I mean, every little thing dude is doing, you know, it's going on social media. I don't care what anybody's had for breakfast. You know, to me, it's just not a point of conversation. And I know that a lot of people, their lives are on social media, and so this is the type of stuff that they love talking about because they just, you know, want to engage with people for whatever reason. And that's fine. My career is on social media, so I get it to an extent, but I guess I'm just different. You know, I've worked at radio stations before where they're like, dude, why don't you post more on Instagram, you know, about like what you do with your day and stuff like that. And I'm just like, bro, to me, it doesn't matter what I had for lunch. You know what I mean? Like I'm not attention starved in that regard. And I understand that these companies got to make their money and they got to get their clicks and all that. And they got to keep everything going and generating the information and all that stuff. I get all that. Simultaneously, it's just like at some point, like when is enough enough? You know, and I guess it truly is a beast that will never be fed. But I'm just different in that regard. Like, even when I was thinner and, quote, good looking and all that, I still just didn't post pictures of myself everywhere, all day, every day, just because I didn't feel the need to try and fill my ego like that. You know, I'll take pictures if I'm going to go cover an event or something like that. But even then, usually it's like a picture of where I'm sitting at, you know, or what my hotel room is for the night or places that I'm eating or whatever. Like, you know, but I'm out doing stuff that's away from my normal day-to-day task. I don't need to tell you guys I did a workout today. That's me though, you know, for the most part. I guess I'm just different in that way. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bore. Who knows? Regardless, excuse me. Had to kill the mic so I can sneeze. Usually I go back to back with sneezes, but whatever. Oh, McCormick. He is going into his 9th season. Good for him. Is that a little... Like, I've all been for guys staying in college for a long time. But last I checked, well, then again, he is going to Miami. I mean, maybe he is going to be a doctor. I mean, something like that, if he's going to be, then, you know, why not? And if you're going to be there that entire time, then why not ride out football as long as you can and maybe get some NIL money along the way? I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. It is a little bizarre, though, that the NCAA is allowing it. Of course, then again, you've got to remember that a lot of it has to do with, you know, the injuries that he's had. You know, what was it in 2016, right? He was a redshirt. And then in 2017, he was a redshirt freshman again. And then he had the season-ending injury in 2018. 2019, he missed the season with an injury. 2020 was a COVID year, right? So then season-ending injury in 2021, technically he was a senior in 2022, right? And then he was granted a year of eligibility and back-to-back years, this year and, of course, this past season and the next season. And if I remember right, I think he started out with Oregon, and now he's with Miami. But I think that this is the last year of eligibility, though, that the NCAA is going to grant him. I don't really know that I have an opinion on it one way or the other for the most part. I don't really think that he's going to go to the NFL or do anything. I will say this. I think that if he does go to the NFL, for me, it's not a bad deal to be more matured physically in your body to go to the NFL. You know, you're a 20, 21, 22-year-old. You're going to the NFL to face grown 30-year-old men. I mean, the first time you get hit, you're going to know that you've been in the NFL. And if his body is more matured when he goes to the NFL, then to me, all that's symptomatic of is, well, I get to have a little bit of a longer career because my body is more prepared for the NFL. And for that, I don't have an issue with it. And let's not forget that a lot of people are getting eligibility grants because of the 2020 COVID year. You know, a lot of people decided not to play. A lot of the games were cut short. There were plenty of universities and colleges out there that just completely dropped the season, right? And, you know, I mean, that was the whole thing about that season. It was kind of part of that debate about who should get into the CFP was who's played the most amount of football games. That was a big part of it. There was, you know, remember Michigan? You know, people were saying, well, Michigan backs out. It's only because they're trying to keep Ohio State from going to the college football playoff. That's why, because they created, I think, what was it, like a minimum? You got to play a minimum of, I think, 5 games in order to get in CFP that year. So that was a bizarre year that kind of set a lot of people back in that regard. And, again, NIL money, I mean, it is changing the game in the way that it is. All right, everybody, we got to take a break and pay these bills. I'm Drew Duncan. The show's fired up. Don't touch that dial.
Block 50 Global Radio.
Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. The show's fired up, and we are live. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Take a device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan on iTunes, iHeart, Google. Wherever you're listening, I am there. I am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, etc. All at Drew Duncan Radio. I am brought to you in part by WBFR Block 50 Radio, who is online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. You can listen to programming all day, every day there. You can check out the latest in entertainment and sporting news, etc. Block 50 Radio, wherever you are, they are. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, etc. That's all Block 50 Radio. Guys, still plenty to get to. We're going to be talking about Caleb Downs transferring from Alabama. We're going to be talking about Jason Kelsey, says his future is undecided. We're going to be talking about Paul. Pascal Siakam, who is going from Toronto to Indiana. We're going to be talking about TCU women's basketball, who has had to open up tryouts because they've had so many injuries. They don't even have a full team to field at this moment. And they've already had to forfeit to Kansas State, as a matter of fact. When was that yesterday? They had to forfeit that game, and they've already got another game that they've had to forfeit as a result. So we're going to be getting into that as well. Guys, I am on YouTube, The Real Drew Duncan, the RL Drew Duncan. I do post entire episodes there for free. The only thing that I ask in return is you go ahead and hit the sub button for me. Bama, Caleb Downs, he is transferring, the All-American. Boy, I tell you what. You know, here's the thing. Once again, I brought this up initially when DeBoer took over the football team. This is exactly what I talked about. I talked about it again the other day on the program, and I'm going to reiterate that with players transferring, right, because Isaiah Bond left, he went to Texas, and he cited the main reason as, quote, a business decision because Nick Saban is no longer there. This is what is going on right now in Alabama, and this is what DeBoer is going to have to deal with. It's much more difficult to me at the collegiate level, potentially, than anywhere else to take over after a legend. I mean, you know, the thing that I always equated to is, you know, Frank Solich in Nebraska. I mean, he made it like a seamless transition But then they struggled because they had to fire him. I mean, there's a lot of alleged stuff out there. There's a lot of rumors, and again, supposedly some of that, again, happened at Ohio, which, I'm not going to get into. I'll let you do your research on that. But then you found out real quick how difficult it is to find a good head coach, right? Bill Callahan, what did he ever do in Nebraska? I mean, they had that one season where they should have been a good football team, right? They had Zach Taylor as a quarterback, and they had several games that season where they blew really big leads. They could not finish games. They had a really, really hard time. And remember, he got fired because Tom Osborne was, at that time, the governor of Nebraska, and he flat out said, Bill Callahan said, if that SOB thinks he's going to run things from Washington, he's got another thing coming, because Tom Osborne was made to be the athletic director at Nebraska. And that's what led to the hiring of Bo Pelini. Bo Pelini won 8-9 games every single year in Nebraska, but he couldn't beat a team with a winning record, and he was psychotic towards football players. You think finding a good coach is easy, and it's not, and trying to follow that act, what Tom Osborne did for the University of Nebraska, just wasn't going to happen, especially in the 90s when he finally not only got one championship, but 3 championships. You just have to understand how difficult it is, especially nowadays with the transfer portal and everything being the way that it is. Players do not have to stick around anymore if they don't want to. This is going to be a very, very trying time for DeBoer. This first season could potentially cause a lot of freakouts and panics. Alabama, they're so used to winning 11 games a season right now. Can you imagine his first year they win 7 games? More kids leave, more kids transfer, and they just, they don't want to be there. Decommits are probably a thing that is going to happen as time goes along. This is going to be a really difficult time. That's what I'm saying. You've got to give DeBoer some time here. You're going to have to really be patient because everything is going to change in Alabama. You have got to be patient. If you think that right away he is going to come in and win 10, 11 football games with this roster, I just don't see it happening. I would not be surprised if that first season they win maybe 7 or 8 games, and that includes a bowl win. Brian Kelly is probably foaming at the mouth right now with LSU. Auburn is probably foaming at the mouth right now. This is their chance. Lane Kiffin, this is it. I mean, they've got about a 3-year window right now to where potentially they could take over the SEC West. Lane Kiffin could make his move because now you can beat Alabama. I mean, there's just a million and one things, but the bottom line here is whether you're SEC East, SEC West, it doesn't matter. Now that game against Alabama becomes a little bit more enticing because it is all a part of how you rank during the regular season in the SEC and trying to make sure you get that SEC title game just to make sure that you get an end to the college football playoff. Kirby Smart probably going to end up finally getting an SEC title over Alabama if he gets the chance. But I just don't see Alabama playing in an SEC championship this year. You're going to have to take time. Let him get his recruits. Let him get everything in order. This is going to be a potential nightmare for the first couple of seasons. You've got to let him do his thing. Jason Kelsey, he goes on his podcast, New Heights, and he was mad at Adam Schefter, which he's not the first one, right? Remember when Adam Schefter said that Tom Brady was going to retire, and then Tom Brady after that retired and then goes, nah, forget that. I'm going to come back. And he was upset with Adam Schefter. I mean, I get it because, number one, as good as Adam Schefter is at his job, because he is very good at his job, everybody gets it wrong sometimes, and that's okay. But I think sometimes athletes do and say things just to spite him. I will say this. Jason Kelsey was just very, it's an emotional time right now. I don't think it's a good idea to make that decision. They already, though, had to convince him to come back for another year. But I think his thing is, look, I don't want you to announce anything for me. My career has deserved the respect of I get to say when I'm done. I think that was Tom Brady's thing. I think that's Jason Kelsey's thing. And to that point, I don't have a problem with it. I understand Adam Schefter's just doing his job. That's all there is to it. He has a very specific job that he does at ESPN. Nobody's as good at him or as good as he is at doing it. There have been a lot of people that have called for him to be fired, but he's good at his job whether people like it or not. I'm just saying I think that in terms of some players, even if you've got the inside track, it's just not a good idea. You know, like one day Patrick Mahomes will call it quits. Should we know before Patrick Mahomes confirms anything, given the career that he's already had? Imagine what it'll be, 10 years down the road from now. I just think that while I know that Shefty is doing his job and that's what he's supposed to do, I also understand where other people are coming from. And I think that when all is said and done, we have to be more responsible sometimes in terms of what knowledge we have and what we choose to do with that knowledge. And I think it's a respect thing more than it is anything else. And I don't think it would be very difficult for people to believe Adam Schefter if he were to get on after Tom Brady or Jason Kelsey or somebody like them announced we're going to retire if he went on. Look, I had inside information about this. I suspected that this was going to happen. I held off, though, because I wanted to give them the distinguished pleasure of announcing a retirement at their own bed because they have had careers that have been noteworthy enough for them to be able to say, this is my time. I get to make this announcement. I've earned this. I've gained that respect. And to that, I think everybody would probably, even the naysayers, I think deep down would probably still believe him. They'd just be talking, to be honest with you. All right, everybody, we got to take a break. We'll be back. Don't touch that dial.
Block 50 Global Radio.
Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. The show's fired up, and we are live. Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Take a device to play Fired Up by Drew Duncan on iTunes, iHeart, Google. Wherever you're listening, I am there. I am brought to you in part by WBFR, Block 50 Radio. They are online 24/7, 365 at block50radio.com. Wherever you're listening to podcasts, Block 50 Radio is there. Block50radio.com has everything that you need. The latest in entertainment, sporting news, 24-hour-a-day programming, etc. Block50radio.com meets all of your entertainment and sports needs. It starts on the block. Guys, I am on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Drew Duncan Radio. TikTok is The Real Drew Duncan. Same as my YouTube, The RL Drew Duncan, where I do post entire episodes for free. I can promise you there won't be ads, but I can tell you that it's going to be for free. But the only thing I leave out generally is the recap because, pretty much already told you everything you need to know. I don't think anybody wants to listen to a recap when they've heard everything else already. So there's that. Speaking of which, quick recap here of the program. Again, Braun, hell of a dad. Do I think he's the GOAT? No, but just because I don't think somebody isn't the GOAT on the court doesn't mean that I don't think they're amazing off of the court. And that is the case with LeBron James. Hell of a dad, invested in his kid's life. The kid suffered cardiac arrest. We're talking about a proud father. Is USC that good? At the last I looked before this game, they were, 8-9 going in. People can boo him. It is what it is. I'm not necessarily for it. I'm not necessarily against it. But I am for everything that Braun is and what he represents off the court as far as being a dad and a husband goes. Do I agree with him politically all the time? No, of course not. But do I agree with everybody politically all the time? No, of course not. I think we have to get to a place where we're making individual case-by-case decisions, and it's just really weird to me that anybody would see LeBron as anything less than a role model in terms of his personal life. The Clippers are adding wall seats. I don't know. $5 to $25,000 for a full season. If you pay the full $25,000, it's a little over $600 a game. I just, from the seating arrangement that I saw, I can't get with it. I think if you want to do something like that, you've got to be in the middle of the court. That's the best place. I mean, unless there is some sort of like microphones there where they can hear throughout the stadium or something like that. But even then, from a sound guy, you don't want stuff to get muddled. So I don't know. It is what it is. I like the idea of trying to turn it into a little bit more of a collegiate type atmosphere, a lot like what we see in Oklahoma City. To me, that's probably the best atmosphere other than maybe what we see in Portland for the NBA. But I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens when it actually comes out. Speaking of Portland, I guess they could not get out Andre Ayton, which, again, people, if they can't get in, then how in the hell is he supposed to get out? As somebody who grew up in the Midwest and has been around ice and slippery weather and all that type of stuff his whole life, some of it is very manageable, some of it is not. I haven't seen photos, so from what I can tell, they probably made a very good call, and that is, look, this isn't worth risking anything. Go ahead and sit this one out, big bro. We'll see you in the next one. Pretty damn simple. Pretty damn simple. McCarthy stays in Dallas. Look, it's the right thing to do. Consecutive winning seasons. I know that you're tired of being ousted in the playoffs, but there are bigger things. And look, I've talked about Dak Prescott a million times. It goes beyond Dak. The special teams has been hit and miss. Obviously, we saw some really good special teams play against the New York Giants, but we saw some really bad special teams and some really good special teams play even against the Green Bay Packers. But on the offensive side, basically, as special teams, they haven't done very good, and they put themselves in very bad situations. I know you're trying to make a play, but sometimes just take that knee or let the ball go into the end zone or whatever, fair catch it, start at the 25-yard line. Defensively on special teams, on that side of the ball, they've done very well. Offensive side of special teams, they have not. So that needs to get worked out as well. But I think that Dak should probably be gone by the end of this time frame before the season begins. I think he'll be out of there. Jared Mayo, head coach, New England. Again, one of my favorite things that he said was, look, I'm not going to try and be Bill Belichick, which is exactly what needs to happen. You can't be anything or anyone other than yourself. Now, obviously, as I pointed out, he's going to have to deal with some things. Like, look, Bill wanted it done this way. That's fine, Brody, but I'm here now. This is how I'm going to do things. This is how I'm going to do team meetings. This is how I'm going to do film study. This is how I want you to run this play. And to be honest with you, I think with that comes a change of the quarterback position. I think Jaden Daniels would fit right in with what New England is trying to accomplish. I'm just saying, I think that's where he goes now. C.J. Gardner, look, only one of two things are happening there with him and Baker Mayfield. Either Baker Mayfield accidentally got C.J. Gardner to go do a little bit more research and film study, or C.J. Gardner was trying to make himself look like he's not really doing that when he is doing that. Again, I just feel like with Coach Dan Campbell, I just cannot see anybody not putting in the full work, especially given what the Lions have done this season. Nobody has been a bigger detractor of them than myself. Nobody. Jared Goff, nobody. What they've accomplished so far has been pretty damn good. Obviously, if they win, they will probably have to contend with the San Francisco 49ers. But the reality of the situation is they've done a lot more than I think any of us really thought they would do. I mean, I was one of the ones that said at the beginning of the year, we're going to look back on the season with this Lions and Chiefs win, and we're going to say, well, Detroit had a nice win, but at the end of the day, the Chiefs were the Chiefs, and that was it. So far, we can't really say that, can we? Now, obviously, they're both headed to the divisional playoffs, so we'll see what happens going from here. But again, the Lions have accomplished so much, and the way that Dan Campbell is so invested and so fired up with that ball club, I don't see anybody running around town not knowing that Russell Cage got hurt at the beginning of the season in August, before the year even began. Wasn't it a practice with the Jets where he had the knee injury and it was season ending? For my money, I can't imagine anybody not knowing that plays football. I'm just saying. Again, Texas Rodney Terry said it was classless for Central Florida to throw horns down. It's going to be okay, Brody, I promise you. Look, take your L, move on, make it so that way they can't do it again. That's it. It's really simple. Look, man, people are going to celebrate, and if you're going to throw horns up, then don't talk about people who throw horns down. And do not make fun. And this goes for the whole university. Speak out when the university, whether it's football, baseball, track and field, whatever, makes fun of other people for their celebrations, because it seems to happen a hell of a lot over at Texas. But for some reason, when Texas does it, it's okay. But when somebody does it to Texas, it's all bad. If you're going to dish it out, then you have to be willing to take it. That's all I'm saying. It's got to be even kill, my man. That's all. Bama, DeBoer, again, it's the headlines are going to read. It's already happening. You've got, Caleb Downs, he's transferred. Isaiah Bond, he's transferred. What is next? Potential, losses now in recruiting and decommits and all that type of stuff. This is going to be a long road, Alabama fan. You are going to have to be patient with DeBoer, especially the university, the athletic director, and all them. They're going to have to realize that this is a huge regime change. And regardless of whether or not it ends up being about money, the easy justification is Nick Saban is no longer there. This is how things are going to be for a little while. You're going to have to deal with it. Let him recruit his guys, bring them in, and try and develop and hope that they're willing to stick around for a few years. Really, that's any university right now. As far as that goes, almost every university is in the same boat with that. And this is part of what I think Nick Saban just did not want to deal with. I know we talked about his health, but let's be honest, mental health comes attached with new things in the game that now I got to deal with this now. It's that. All right, everybody, I am Drew Duncan. The show's fired up. WBFR, Block 50 Radio, block50radio.com. Your local programming is next. Don't you dare touch that.